Australia, the newfound Oman rogue nation of deep state Oman, currency. Shore-willing Australia is the deep state capital cause of core collusion scares in United States Washington District Central of American Heartland Carriage of Justice Administration. And the political DNC files of the infamous duress of amnesty whistleblower Julian Assange. Tenfold. Explosive evidence all too familiar in that seventh woe of biblical nigh. One knew and now catches at a glimpse yet as to when. Ask why. Note, a Victorian-era extensionality in session yet under intense investigation and corporate watch command and defense certification. Note, caught in a cable junction spinster synchronism and a bug-bearing assault. Against definition, of all sensitive efforts to global administration, or a name known amongst the populace as those from the country of the land down under. A graphical proportion and mystery people. Tests of inconsistency held internally against itself and withstood beyond power. Note, sheer twist coincidence you might add. Or should we say a statistical occult hidden in numbers squared against itself. Once said a place unequaled in extremity, seismology, and title-bound peace and suitable grammar, Rupert Murdoch inclusive to a News Corp mystery. Nevertheless now a dangerous front political coup capital witchcraft essential to reveal just why and so. Or is this, the country nation of Australia suffering, the worst domino effect in the world of geopolitical matrix history? History knows it the Victorian-era extension of British empirical suspicion. The leading serendipitous history of all of world's history. What is happening to its people individually is a hatch above suspects. Let US now look at this. Ladies and gentlemen, let's go swimming. Member United Nations counterparts seem to clue us at pace with the Roman Catholic Church and corporate America. Again question its rogue status. Terminal quagmire. Note, a contestant shortfall emerging unimagined by its dreamtime presidents. A rogue nation with or without aptitude. A victim of its own Goldilocks scheme subsidy. Again note, vain subsidy and Baal worship mad. It's a clinch mechanism only dreams may find in characterized books. This might be their weak spot application. At least. In delivery through publication. Ask yourself why so flippant in philandering tactics or vile passions. Is it a lair of serpentry, witchcraft and cauldronism? Knock knock, who's there? It is not the DOA. Squad. Scaled estimates to fair projected economic security, the censorship laws of a worsening world. A corkscrew debate, modified to dazzle yet diametrically tantalized in fear of guiltily obstructing calculus formats, rank civil justice. Mark liaison and known consequences albeit dormant at reality. Note, real and all too idle real in a teethering war of attrition. Pattern politics of a Hawksbury lint scoffers and ridiculed pardoners. Aloft indemnified. Civil liberties indemnity beyond a global index pattern to measure or to facilitate. Julian Assange is one of many high-profile names but the issues are consumptive, holistic and widespread. With who, what, when and so be it. No just, a legislative one-size-fits-all policy for so long without formal reform it never knew its unjust weakness. Its controversy built by a big brother nanny state identity. The rogue of its own unwished wishes. Now the normacy of norms. Australia. Therefore be sure to assess a given situation. Claims highlighted. Concentration. What are we supposed to be facing? Laced circumstances. You've got to be kidding. Derogatory in pursuit lapsed in power, attorney and the Watergate indemnity on its own watch and suppressed evidences. What is an inventory without supplies worth that of modern-day advancements? Is a nation too vain to see out their own free will? Even whilst it's impossible for them to provide the foreground exceptions to necessary claim of riding out the pardoning factors. Diplomatically, the terms of communication is shared by every known language of the civilized global masses, and such any universal warrant never be an asphyxiated, manipulated craft-bearing tally of desertion, or reckless abandonment, without identifying an inherent human rights crimes trial. Belt-sized optimism in the midst of doubts beyond any community of simple excise heist and equation. Detailed. Multidimensional sparks guaranteed to upset the galvanized hopes of any and every sovereign nation who recall the survival of dupe entities that squander their hopes as much as time. We often call those companies from any national source background liquidated deadbeats. The numbers always speak. Yet they fall into categorical administration, to cry like lame duck excuses and beggars' belief to entitle themselves honorable wartime survivalists amongst casualties. Licensed beggars to lament the volitional trend of the Fourth Reich and utter bunt bearers of the coward plot tags past history tense describe as POWs. Had they not stirred confinement greater to such an effect, they are prisoners of their own undoing. An inventory without supplies almost seems like a declaration forever based on underclass graduates and squanderers of the regiment. If you're a complacent nation, you need say no more. Your class dictatorship speaks for itself. Impoverished casualties of the wrong worship. Arch-rival competition found less of a penny feather, shunned desert dust stench, or agoraphobic of the cement broadwalk. Our primary past tends to suggest the detail of former graduates in ITP. Fields never fail one number or colleague amongst their own sourced enterprise. As entailed, impoverished casualties of the wrong worship. Complacent without prejudice, to lean upon moral excuse, class alibi and genial pursuits. Inventories without supplies equals the kind of bodge job efforts, and complacency inapt both scientifically, corporately and above all, administratively you would expect from factions with limited association and not the latter estimates of a feigned casualty superstated or personified. Even under close military ops to guard frequency counters to now known projects involving microprocessors serving stints still readily accessible to 20th century implantation methods. It just would not make sense without highlighting a light-headed freedom guarding the greater principle at stake. You could seize the information and indulge that. A departmental gimmick was taking place. Underfunded and badly fraught through by cheeky niggardly spectacle. Or you may in fact seize the predicaments of such unwarranted activity, as a bodge job attempt protected by a pathetic industrial trade license with cheapskate mechanisms at pace with reprobated fears of retrieval and consolidation. The processes in use without consolidation, held in the midst of stagnant grace known just too damn plain safe and prerogative. This would be known as an extortion taking place on an unmarked citizen. Yes indeed. Or would it be in fact even safer to use stronger language of circumspect assertion untrialed or tested at court level within the nation in question? Never. Ever trialed and tested. Refer to Oaths Act and adoring diplomatic pardoning commissions. How convenient. Substance detailed. This is an area where technically an inquisition would need to be drawn against the status quo, and an investigation pathway to establish the espionage lobbyist acts of advertised space and liability. Albeit sad cases of beehive mind mediocrity, falling on their internal sword via subliminal warfare. And not the kind of excelsior rates plucked from the numbers of class action magnitude, but that of sheer corporate mismanagement and vain integrity, features acquired by a fortunate and protected concession. Otherwise known as a criminal faction. But yet a bodge job one at pace with age-old sanctions. And a completely reprobate mandate widely identified as many a case of departmental fraud. Identity theft. Cabinet rape. In-house extortion. Slave possession. Exploitation rackets. Analog embezzlement. Digital skimming. Cold-shouldered defamation. Impervious acts of flagrant political heresis and criminal shepherding, breaking the Geneva Convention of Human Shielding in residential preservation or undergone hospital visitation records. If one was kidding. Insensitive to the middle ground conventions that built a world without penalty to waver or dictate against the classes. Fascists, cheapskate, chauvinistic and downright Australian. Snobbery unlocked and dramatized damage control. Australia the beautiful, Australia the compromised. And the cannon fodder of sidearm politics. And the workplace fodder of cheapskate enterprise bargaining schemes of today's generation and entitlements. End quote. Old English Deutsch swindle. And blind swipe catter. Very easy-go-lucky conniving spin and thrift ledge operators. Cheap string attachments. Insubordinate, illuminated pathways, and secular motion within. Imagine the encapsulated knowledge of our fellow companies, and the assembly, side-swiping their advertised settlements. To forefront address amongst the classes like two-faced shoestringers, in essence, operators to be beheld as majestic in nature. Yet found to the date demoted as an accustomed type of tall poppy class within our industry, hallmarks of fame, accreditation, notoriety and indulgence unknown. Yet to uncover the criminal traits of tall order pursuit, stupid and lured over slave possessive fieldworks and culpable tenure. This type of brokerage can be linked to the activity funded by the Church of Scientology. As if to offer people under contract a better life than previous meant that it took the profile off from the government watchtower's black book management schemes. Or opportune to inherit one at best. For better or for worse. For richer or for poorer. For sickness or in health. Till death do us part for 1 billion years contractual assurance. And liken the Victorian era extension of cell block history. Serendipitous commitment to the feats of Great British Empire. To have and to hold for a exchange of sorts unless file and rank extortion was taking place without just reward to enforce. Almost impossible. A rogue nation would emerge. Australia in true magnitude was imperviously unalert to constant. In a tactical short-range facet of digital counterclockwise activity, failing the demeanor of one's geared outfit's new vein in effort, found compromising the wealth of global partners and congressional fortitude. How ironic of the cheeky, coward and niggardly windows of professional rank standards. Defamatory stints in an inapt world of regulatory standards that forever finger point to an area of redundant racial deficit. A race against time in a squattocracy of its own. A Baal-worshipping scout's den of departmental quota and tax bundling setbacks. Common everyday occurrences remain the same in any jurisdict, yet not where scapegoat tactics are built conducive of an extension. Extensionality is a welcome home doormat and an incontrovertible space you would worship. Well, the weight of civil liability now has a security bandwidth to annihilate the construct of divisional organizations. This may as well be forever in step with a private-funded scheme of needy tracks even in common zest by the elite. To a counterweight production to release off an affordable socio-economic funding block. Ask why then the need to guard exploitation rackets to an effect like cans of sardines in-house to assert themselves. Or on a cruise sea liner against the grain. Or a nest egg of circuitry shortfall within a bereft settlement. Psychosomatics just wouldn't outshine the stimulus. A sweetheart would have already established a need for direction and sympathy would override immediate consent. Fraudulent and forged counsels therefore from no personal authentic source of formal amendments, industrial retention, or compound graphic, worth, value or input to showcase a determinated pathfinder or script could heal an open case of an even keel operation, or in clean slate just to a reunited playing field. How slippery and cheap could a forefront operation be found at the helm of a simple decision to wage well? If in fact intellectual property from the Receivers' end red flagged a fresh wound of grievous political stigma. This would be seen as extortion on an unmarked citizen, but well known to the departmental privileged family companies in private and primarily detailed. To opportune such momentum as today's class number tallies could indulge autistically. A 100% gimmick of industrial shortfall, corkscrewed investments sullen to a dimension of convening frequencies that ought bear too cheap and reality-seeking. That by doing so, it expunges and scab labors those opportunists to a space and liability matter of thereby a fresh skin's effort of color and culture trail to well suit the trail of newer prospectives to avoid lawful synergy of mass confrontation, desperate to assert a universal cover of tall order remarks. Unjust and pliable scheme deficiency of a radioactive symbolism in spite of the proverbial stigma to face the rank and file of a stage debate. Fairer platforms you would know. But not in stolen graphics or copyright signatures. No sir, no siree. Sires produce markets themselves without fault or consent, or in general could forever accommodate a simple defined right to a just and fresh sought after healthy restitution, whether a willingness to accept liability or through patchwork investments well guarded under scrupulous ties. Our stronger humilities of finances and friendships always do in fact. Quote, who could be kidding nigh or near each other, the casualties too often compelling, as dramatized grounds of marginal complacency. Auditorial mongering amongst the pennyweight dead, and or the corporate balancing acts of protection racketeering, public relations and those diamond-cast fears of elaborate sanction highlights damage control. We call these peoples our fellow husbands and brothers. Fellow wives and sisters. confidence and camaraderie when seeking it, only to be faced with it. How rough and rowdy is a pipsqueak, if the integrity is too damn hidebound and obsolescence for today's digital liaison to shake through or pack off. The imperative rate of caution is but a tricky and well-devised substance of today's fellow geopolitical rank and file, embodied to steer the humility in more ways than vain editing scripts new described. My knight, my shining armor, my dame, my thing that just wanted a pony for an enigma. Unbelievable politics within the hallmarks of gravity. Wouldn't it be said? Wouldn't one say a mob of wankers who targeted and hoodwinked a safer known guardian of integrity, if not also the world around us? Itineraries, albeit the missing link to global security markers in our valedictorian classes. Shame on us, shame on 'em who try us as a pardoner. Children of light or obscure abyssal and cannot festively face the music of era form politics. It's say the least magnified. Accustomed to and for a tight trauma of G-Clef Rift Valley notoriety. To shift onto our world dominates itself by people, power and politics. Not to mention lawful identification and congenial framework leaving no man undone. Never for any man's attempts beyond the badges and headsets attached to the rags and riches of any a private yet well-industrialized complex range of confidence and magnitude. Rags are needed by children as much as the helm thinks of the end the same. Whistle and need not attempt to when the impersonation features of substantiated roll call knoweth all too many a fine line dignity from a bold cap view. Truly ironic in most calendar standoffs. Incested outbursts amongst power mongers filled with outreach status to make the time and work seem dazzling. Howbeit so dependent on each other till a wretched issue had disposed themselves for being loved dry for abundant supply, and runs dry from the classic summons detail of Scales Held Incorporated. Could be classic date rape extortion that fell into corporate espionage and a real true casualty with life and limb at stake. Like an electric blanket mounted to cover telescopic time, the tides bear the greater elements of expectant outcome. A hangar without solute to a skypath or channel cockpit is SOTA without a real wing or a true prayer. And yet whilst this all continues, so does the world around us, and bolder motives and greater highlighted distraction points within the rise of Watergate scandal and division politics. Principal languages can be also the merry chemistry of a distraction point before the folklore of united freedom can emerge and dominate private viewpoints if the case suggests a solution had and was present beyond close cannon fodder ranks, and yes, voluntary administration would task with the extraction from the worsening friction between loins and sanctions. Girdle suffice knowledge if not surfacing from the caution of corporate standoff. Legitimacy would thereby act as a cliché, just like a decoy or even a controlled convoy would cover a sporadic type of second-wave checkpoint distraction point from the marginal test of colloquial freedom. Or here, cosmopolitan objectivity stuck beyond the powerful and elite range investment of yes, voluntary council administration, to challenge ye emphatically. Jew personified the oracles of everyday business pied to a spectacle or scandal and ready to beleaguer them. That sounds almost too good to be true. True sport and true excellency with a capitally singular attachment. The who's who of politics. Well. Indeed, powers of their own class undoing. Impoverished casualties of the wrong worship. Failing to withstand the pressure of signature strength, grace, counsel and stealth assessment engagement. An omen of many sorts. Time merges intrinsic, howbeit to play a cool card, but sought to differ some duck double goose challenge and the resignation of a given sage difference. Forfeiture on account of those internal exclamants who completely stuff the insurance numbers in an offset stagecoach, unwillingly aware of the politics of ground earth industry beyond their circuit. And this again would be seen as extortion on an unmarked citizen, weighed into an extraordinary individual case of mistaken identity. Freedom attachments. Detailed. The project. The rogues and where veil is unfolded. Any country would have laid 'em out at any stage. Yes, sire, lo. Bait from the file, sticking to roll, picking to move, giving to go, lifting to stick and picking to roll when forever moving against the wishes of their internal culture. more hidebound than any time the casualties, stating Devas to abject federally it was interrogation tactics. What a forsaken statement to cause such silly busybodies warrant and reinvention. The first casualties of rank-file political disposition, surrounding themselves with sponges like a mole cave in need of a hole in their head space. Like a scuba diver needs a wetsuit. That's the old age creed one would suggest, who through grace and known crimes of unwarranted fermented provocation, within the immediate agent range of licensed provocateuring pilfering their qualification from an outsourced entity, known mildly as a form of stolen copyright distribution. How often too slippery this can sometimes borderline a greater warrant than landmark conjugation, or even the internal use of media-sourced enterprise schemes, just like extortion, or even pasteurized folklore heresies of a stowaway nature. Tactics used on many a sought-after conduit statement or two, of an exclamation, APB battery dialogue. If Confederate provisions, for example, featured a tranquility of cigarettes and coffee from a distance vantage point, doubled down offset through digital enclosures, subliminal tracking devices, and the trend found 100% unpaid for by Confederate nest egg suspicions of capitalization, profiteering from crime or without offense or opposition. What would inadmissible evidence look like to a jury court cross-examiner in logic? Despite the curriculum defense held back by shortfall fear and enigma to assert higher and wiser, one would only wonder. Some type of cross-contamination or paid admission through an approved, authorized Confederate bond scheme. Probably more like excellency in the form of political stalemate. Say bait the moods behind civil statutory lawsuits protecting passport freedom of politicking thuggery. Just like yearbook class academia held back for many years those exceptional grade-level standouts, held through criminal extortion amongst department records and COW scales of levy-torn processes, or held at digital muzzle point to educate courtisan factions of an autistic spectrum, digit circa extraction numbers to a rank uncovering of nautical stimuli greater than crud, or borderline company. You might ask, what could be more crucial of a dependency rate? Talents, fathoms and knots of stealth-grade archives, robust intelligence, polarity signals of an archive prosecution at peril with telecommunication warfare, dulled and foiled against valedictorian liberty, and personal wealth and literal expenditure rates of stimulus security, both in IS state catalog or more so over. Benchmark capabilities of civil discernment outweighed in design to engross capsulate the sciences of IS pardon and serve as an obliteration. An expert in generosity. Ha 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 ha. Litigation in gross consolidation through a sheer case of broken politics maybe. Via the simulation of transitional freedom most certainly indeed. Without renunciation. It must serve bound to be an ultimate wave link of shock and all politics. Yes yes. Campaign freedom annexed against the sidearm tactics of state and church. What could possibly be at stake in the midst of many weighted civil compensations? End quote. Optimism is different from an open book. But brainwashed one would not seek to be. Vulnerability suggests the equivocation of no-holds-bars tactics. Henceforth, should a person be consistently raped or heavily sedated during any known trial of simple Simon IQ. Get me off, but no, we are busy with a copyright. Detailed. Behold, in a three-way tie, panel, jury, debate or tribunal, 3 cannot be right. 2 cannot be wrong. 1 always answers the talent. Who could argue the 21st century prototype catalyst for surviving the long fraught after congression of enlisted noble statesmanship, in general or fellowship of goodwill liberty? No different than those hopes our secular barter trade options differ when seeking a general assembly, even to place your feet just in a fare fully paid for by formal amendments at the discretion of council fit management or departmental use of systems acquisition. Humanitarian-based exercise where freedom is more worthy of privilege than an ingratiated mask could masquerade in an open playing field. Stage plays would discord the rescinded terms if the situation presented no deception other than the processes to act upon file application. Purposes intended always where the subsidiaries investigate upon the credibility of immediate pro bono representation, as you would expect due sympathy in earnest for such a life trial of hell, astonishment to greater subjugation matters of investigation hiauged during proliferation treatise. Abroad, the blown covers of investigation, if addressed, would Jack Spade trump the bloody lot. It would be seen as a watershed event in the compiling of evidence never defended by the nation country of Australia. Nor shall never should they. History would already abominate the national red-letter definition via the common denomination, and Australia would not even possess a human pulse to fight and win a shot. No plot, scheme or moral denouement could outclass the galvanized efforts where an innocent citizen sought to seek a healthy agreement to compensate his lengthy fought-off damage. Personally, anyone with a sincere heart and soul need never flatter the outcome by extemporaneous means to challenge the status quo. History would relinquish a tougher bit to fess than having to indicate or blinker a derived substantive. Identify the warm wish or karma might galvanize more than future prospect limited in wagering terms of console operations. Learn from victory. The just reward of a voice held high. And a concernable love for the uplifting of one's own integrity. Where dignitaries are perfectly understood by those amongst armed with the rare coat of majesty. As one up for the common duty of bold order regulation. Or cleaner forms of true mateship in need of only that of his gratitude to bear. The sustained grace of adoption to each and every good will. Trustworthiness that only a honest bold cap might earn. Or accommodate for in earnest or kind. And never a question of give and take. The high moral grounds of integrity and the agency in which to build character. Thus, live by the sword, die by the pen. The tale of the two. Lamented facts and pillars of grace intelligence. Revealed. Optimism is different from an open book, but brainwashed one never would seek to be. Detailed. Australia. The newfound Oman rogue nation of deep state Oman, currency. Shore-willing Australia is the deep state capital cause of core collusion scares in United States Washington District's Central of American Heartland Carriage of Justice Administration. Shore-willing Australia is the deep state capital cause of core collusion scares in United States Washington District's Central of American Heartland Carriage of Justice Administration. Shore-willing Australia is the deep state capital cause of core collusion scares in United States Washington District's Central of American Heartland Carriage of Justice Administration. And the political DNC files of the infamous duress of amnesty whistleblower Julian